Welcome, you're listening to Don't Revive Me Bro, the Battlefield Community Podcast.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome to episode 16 of the Don't Revive Me Bro Community Podcast. And tonight we have some very special guests with us, off-duty gamers. But first I will turn it over to my co-host, the man whose haircut no longer needs an introduction, Mr. Chris Red Dragons.
I thought you were talking about Taco there for a second. With us this week, we have a special co-host, the great Taco Ninja.
Oh, well, hello there, people.
And on the hot seats, we have three guys from Off Duty Gamers. We have Mark, Rick, and Al. Mark, do you want to kind of explain who you are and give us a brief introduction?
Well, I'm the manager of the asylum over at Off Duty Gamers. Came up with a website where it's just all military members who are working on doing reviews for games and doing some consulting. And just kind of brought a couple of guys, Rick and Al, with me tonight to bring in a little more color and get to know us a little better.
Excellent. And Rick, what's kind of your backstory?
I'm a prior U.S. Marines, served for a couple of years, then went into law enforcement, did some security contractor work, and signed on with Mark about a year ago of Off Duty Gamers, actually a little over a year ago now. And been having some fun since, doing a lot of good work with them, loving it. Hoorah!
Awesome. And how about yourself, Al?
I spent my first 6 years in the Army. I was a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne, and the last 22 I've been employed as a C-17 loadmaster in the Air Force Reserve. Gives me 28 years of service. Civilian world, I was also in law enforcement. Ironically, I worked in the same career field as lunch meat there, and I'm a firefighter and an EMT in my hometown here.
Very cool.
See, now they're going to throw out their bona fides like that. Just to give you the background, I guess, since we're going to throw around our bios. I was also U.S. Army, 82nd Airborne Division, so jumped out of planes, and as a parachute rigger. So not as glamorous as the 11 Bravo series, but you can only be airborne once without us.
And while we're throwing around backgrounds, Taco, do you want to kind of give them your brief background, I guess, as much as you can?
Sure. I was prior Army. I was actually a 98 Charlie. It's a 35 November right now. Also, I was airborne, so I spent like 4.5 years. I got stop lost. It was interesting, but me and the Army is like Michael Jordan in baseball. We just don't get along.
Paratroopers have an innate problem with fitting in. I think we only relate to other paratroopers, which is why I think a good bunch of my crew is paratroopers.
Oh yeah.
and
Rick's the odd child out.
Yeah, one Marine in the whole group. That's all it needs, though. We only need one Marine for all you troopers.
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise, babysitting is too expensive.
Oh, that's great. So, Mark, what's kind of your mission at Off Duty Gamers? How did it get started, and what do you guys kind of accomplish?
Well, I guess where did it get started? I run a paratrooper website for 12 years now or so, and as part of that, I found out in 2007, Medal of Honor Airborne was in the works, and through God's good graces, ended up getting invited out to Los Angeles and kind of to do hey, I'm an actual paratrooper, I might be able to have some input on this. And while I was there, the community manager at the time mentioned to me he was doing this homework, and he said, "Hey, I'd love to do the jump towers. It'd be really cool to do that." And I said, "Okay." And he looked at me and said, "What do you mean, okay?" And I said, "I could make that happen." So jump a little forward into July of that year, and we brought all of the people down to Fort Bragg, and we tossed them off the jump towers and let them play Medal of Honor Airborne against members of the 82nd Airborne. And at that point down at Fort Bragg, I realized that there was a lot of military games, and there was a lot of military gamers, and they ended up where most of the military don't go on the regular websites and then make their military service known because there's way too many 13-year-old experts that know more about it. And I figured that this was a niche. We could do stuff where we look at all these military games and kind of look at them from a tactical view, serve a network and serve the military community, and also be able to assist the game industry and say, look, we can offer you consultancy, fact checking and all that kind of stuff. And so that idea kind of brewed for the next 2.5 years. And a year ago, January, I got it online, and here we are. And we're doing really good. We've been, I think, well embraced by the industry. And so far, on the EA side, it's been a really great relationship. And I think we're going to be moving forward with it a lot with BF3. And I know was making plans to go out and get some early looks and hear some of the stuff about what might be in the works for Medal of Honor. So,
very cool.
Excellent. So, generally speaking, not just the EA and DICE titles, but why do you think realism is important in military shooter games? Obviously, this is something you take very seriously, and so why do you think that's an important aspect that the developers need to look at?
Well, I think first off, the big distinction is realism and authenticity. It all depends on what the game maker's shooting for. If they want to make it ultra realistic, we can help them do that. But we're also my thought is, we're going to hold you to that. And in the case of Battlefield 3, they're trying to hit it all. And if they're going to try to it, then we're going to nitpick, and we're going to give them all the stuff to make sure that it stays at that standard. If and I don't mean to pick on Call of Duty, they aren't looking to get that serious about it, then that's fine. They set the bar at a different level, and all we're going to do the same way. We're going to hold them to that level, but make sure that it doesn't get crazy. And also, our mission throughout this whole thing is to make sure that the military is well represented and well portrayed. That, for me, is our biggest thing, is just making sure that there's no abusive stereotypes and things that would demean military service.
Okay. So with that being said, I know that there are games on the horizon that are set to release, but from what you've seen, what's the most authentic military shooter out there today that's currently on the market?
I'd have to say, if you really want to get into the nuts and bolts, and I think you're looking at Armed Assault, Arma 2. I think that's probably where you get a lot of the details and stuff. But we are really liking the Battlefield, and I think it kind of Battlefield Bad Company 2, and we're really looking forward to Battlefield 3. I'm really wondering about what we're gonna see in Red River, but
okay.
But so we'll see.
Yeah, I read that review that you linked about Red River, and it's pretty scathing. It doesn't look too good.
It does make me worry, but I was worried about that one from some of the videos before, and getting a little bit too much into the stereotypes. And unfortunately, when you got a UK team trying to portray the U.S. military, sometimes the bravado and the mythos can get in the way.
Right. That makes sense. So, Al, I know you guys have been doing the trailer analysis for the Battlefield 3 Fault Line trailers.
Right.
Can you kind of walk us through what you guys are looking for?
I think what we're mainly looking for is realism, uniforms, tactics, types of accessories that are on the weapons. We've broken it down and get really nitpicky. We're looking at the types of boots these guys are wearing, the types of glasses they're wearing, if they're wearing eye goggles, that sort of thing. But mostly we're looking for is, do the guys appear to be realistic? Do they move realistically? Do they lay down covering fire for each other? Of course, when you're doing the single player, you want the AI to react like the military does as much as possible. I'm sure once we get into online play where it's man versus man and team versus team, we'll see that the military tactics, you'll have your running gunners, and then you'll have the other folks that will hopefully team up. The prior military guys will team up, and they'll look after each other.
Cool. So going back, I guess, to Battlefield 3, then you guys have said that you're pretty pleased with the way that that's looking. So overall, when it comes to DICE, are you guys happy with their attention to authenticity and detail?
Oh, yeah. I saw it especially in Battlefield 2. Battlefield 3 definitely is looking a heck of a lot better in Battlefield 2. The realism is awesome. You got that RPG coming right at you. You can see that thing glowing in the back as it's coming at you. You hear it shoot over top your head. You hear the rounds, the empty rounds hit the casings hitting the ground next to you. The firing off to the left or the firing off to the right behind you. The realism is getting there, most definitely.
That's interesting. Now,
The big thing, just to hop in on that, is they're really the willingness for that team to really dial it in. They've been really good about taking that feedback. At first we thought we were going to get nitpicked and you're going to have a group of developers that are just going to be groaning, like, hey, it's pre-alpha. But they've been really good about responding to us via Twitter and then some privately about them telling us to keep it coming. So it's really encouraging that they're starting to take that. And we are starting to notice in the later ones, we were starting to notice some of the little stuff was getting picked up, like even the writing on the buildings in Arabic.
Okay.
Now, Rick, do you feel that game developers care about realism? Are they starting to show that more and more, or is it kind of certain developers like EA?
I don't think it's any certain developers. I think it's like Mark said, that the game itself is going to dictate the level of realism you're looking for. If you are going to be playing a game that's based upon strictly reality, I think that is coming more into the fray. Especially, I'm going back to Battlefield 3, they want it to look as realistic and as plausible as they can make it, and they're paying that extra attention to detail. Not everything is going to be 100%. It can't be, but they're doing the best job they can with it, and I've seen other games that have come pretty close as well. And like I said, Battlefield 3 is the one that I talk about now because that's the one that I've seen that is showing the most attention to detail.
But within the last couple of years, outside of the DICE developed games like Battlefield Bad Company 2, are there any others that have also really shone with their particular attention to authenticity and detail?
Oh, the last Medal of Honor, undoubtedly.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, I was on Kunar today, and you go in one of the bunkers, and there's the Air Force symbol spray painted on the wall. Or if you look at the HESCO barriers that form the outside of the combat outpost, you look at the realism. You look on the labels, you can actually read the labels. When you go through some of the other maps, like at Shicot or one of the other compounds or two, if you look on the walls, you see street signs with doner kebabs on them in Arabic. It's just amazing. And then the realism of the characters itself is pretty amazing. The guys come running past you, they're speaking Pashto. And I'm an Afghan vet and Iraqi war vet, and when I heard that Pashto for the first time, it was a little unsettling, but you get used to it and you play the game, you play both sides, and but the realism, it's awesome.
At least you can understand.
That was one of the cool. That was a really cool thing about Medal of Honor, is that they took it to a level of detail that if you were there, and that's what I think Al's getting at, is when you pick that stuff up and say, man, that's how it is. Most of the gamers who play this stuff aren't even gonna, it's not even gonna register. But that, to me, that is a nod to the military complex, and I think that's what embodies the Medal of Honor franchise. They're always very reverent with that brand.
So I got a question. I mean, You talk about all this detail, but I mean, do you ever catch yourself like in a big like firefight in game and ever think about, real life experiences, like past experiences, how the sounds are, the bullets whizzing by, a lot of that, does that ever come back to you? Do you ever
Well,
feel that?
my little boy likes to sit next to me while I'm playing the game, and I've actually ran his toes over with my chair as I moved out of the way to get out of the way from an RPG. And it's on the computer screen in front of me. And when you see that thing kick off and come at you, you try to get out of the way, and I ran his toes over, and of course he didn't appreciate that, but he knows to sit a little bit further away from me now. But as far as flashing back, it's like I said, I come from two different services. I have that infantry background, and I do all the flying now. But I've been in those situations when you get shot at, it changes your entire perspective on life. And flying and getting shot at and being on the ground getting shot at are night and day. But getting shot at is getting shot at. Those bullets will kill you just as dead. And back in 2001, when I first was over northern Afghanistan, in October 2001, dropping rations to the guys that were on the ground there, ODA 555, and some of the CIA guys that were working with the Northern Alliance. And when you see those red tracers come up, that changes your whole perspective on life. It makes you appreciate life a little bit better. And you actually realize that there's bad people out there that will try to kill you for no other reason than you just being an American or a Canadian or Australian or whoever's on our side at this time. And, when you get into the game and you see these characters on the ground, you go, wow, that's what those guys actually look like. And if you get into Bagram or Kandahar or Kabul or something like that, you see the indigenous people walking around, and sure enough, they look and sound just like they are in the video game. And yeah, you could flash back a little bit, but I'm not that shot out yet, so hopefully I'll just keep plugging along.
Yeah, I think in real life, even in not just games, but in real life, having come from a law enforcement background and a little bit of a tactical environment I was in, there are times, even when I'm walking down the hallway, if somebody gets a little too close to me, I'll slap my side, reaching for my firearm that's not there anymore. So it's not just the game, it's the training you went through. We've been through a lot of things. If somebody gets close to me, I start to watch them. If somebody moves quick towards me, I start to get a little uppity with them. It's got nothing to do with the game so much. It's real life. It's anything. It could be a muffler, a car backfiring will make me look at it and start to reach. But, those are reflexes. You can't unlearn reflexes.
Yeah.
I think I'm the only one of the three of us who hasn't been on the receiving end. I was in Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm, and luckily the only enemy I fought for the most of the time was boredom. But the training and everything, I think you just see things differently. Most of the time, it's a matter of you look at a situation, and based on the training, you know what other people are going to do. That's one of the big things that I find about gaming, especially with the military guys, is there's a certain level of expectation what you're going to see and what's going to happen in front of you, and I think that's the tough part of multiplayer gaming with people who just aren't trained and they don't work together. It's like organized chaos. We get a little flustered because things are just moving in ways you wouldn't normally see. But I mean, that's kind of the tough part. But that's why we all band together.
Yeah. So do you find that? Obviously, in the game, you're not going to be able to capture that training, that emotional response that you would have with the real life background, the real life experience. But when you're in game, is it anything? Do they capture it whatsoever in a realistic way? What it's like to be in a firefight or in a live fire exercise? I have to assume that would be almost impossible to reproduce because, in the game you don't have the consequences. You know what I mean? Do you think that anyone has managed to capture that? And
No.
No.
I mean, the bottom line is no, and I don't think you're ever going to see it. I think combat is an absolutely personal, horrible thing to have to do, which is why we respect these guys that go and do that job. It's just it's something that I don't. most of the combat vets will come back and say that they won't even talk about it unless it's with another combat vet, and it's just because there's something about that can't be shared. Even with my familiarity and my training, the combat vet guys talk to other combat vets a completely different way than they will with me, and I respect that, and I don't think it's something you can capture, because that's a scare the hell out of you, life-changing ordeal. At any moment you could be down.
Yeah, there's bonds that you forge with people that once you've faced, simply put it, once you've faced death and come out on the other end winning, you look at those guys that were to the right and to the left of you, and they're your blood brothers for life, and you would literally do anything for them in the future, as far as looking after them or anything like that. But those are those people that something about being in a situation where your life is on the line, be it in law enforcement or firefighting, because you got to trust these people with your life. Whether I was flying on the airplane or when I was an infantry grunt, or if I go into a building today, there's people that I have to trust with my life to pull me out. And there's just that weird bond that gets formed there that will be with you forever. And you look at that guy and you go, man, he's ready to lay his life on the line. And when Rick and I worked in the same type of our line of work in law enforcement, you had to look at each other and go, hey, today might be the day. We might have to put somebody down. Can we do it? And it's just weird and it's hard to explain. But what I like to see in the games, and you'll see it different if you get a group of us together playing. If Rick and Mark and I were playing together, we don't care about the overall points that we get as individuals. We want to achieve the goals as a team, and we'll use our training and we'll talk back and forth to each other. We'll shoot, move, and communicate and play different characters and go after the objectives, whereas you got your running gunners in there just trying to max up their kill rates, and we really don't care about that. We just want to end up winning our objectives at the end, and 9 times out of 10, if we're playing together, we'll come out on top.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that would be my assumption, and you always hear a lot of talk and debate on whether it's YouTube or forums about realism in the game, and I always kind of laugh at that, because I think that there's just aspects that you're never, ever going to be able to reproduce in a video game. So you might as well just enjoy the experience for what it is, for being immersive, and have at it.
So do you guys feel that real-life combat experience makes you better at the game? I mean, it helps you communicate. Do you guys all play on the same platform together, you three, or...?
Yeah, we're all PC for the most part. So I would say the communication skills that you learn in the military, the baseline stuff, kind of goes across branches. So fire maneuver, interlocking fields of fire, just watching, watching out for each other, knowing where people are on the battlefield. That stuff is probably the biggest things that we really use, because we hop in and we'll be playing Battlefield Bad Company 2, and the first thing we do when you get on a server, if you just came in late, you're going to ask everybody what roles do they have, because we'll get in the same squad, and you just assume the role that they might be short. You don't think to yourself, well, I really like to play sniper. If they're short a medic, you're a medic. So that's our big thing, is to use the roles to our advantage and to augment the team.
Okay, so you guys call out movements, you shift fire right, suppressive fire. You guys. Yeah,
we'll call out for each other. We'll it's kind of a blast. We're on TeamSpeak, and I think half the fun is our interaction sometimes, and it gets a little colorful. I mean, obviously you have strict military protocols, but it definitely breaks down into a more conversational, almost comedic.
Oh, the F-bombs are flying.
It's definitely a lot of fun.
You think that gives you an advantage, or do you think in some ways it's just kind of the same as communicating with someone?
When we're playing, I guess it depends on what you call advantage. We will definitely work better together, but one of the things that I've noticed is you can have all the teamwork, unless you have the numbers with you. With 4 or 5 guys in a 25-man, 24-man server, you're not really going to make too much of a difference. But what I find is It all depends on the team you're playing. If they're more organized, you'll actually do better. And that goes to that expectation thing. You don't expect people to jump over, pop up out of nowhere, and blind fire an RPG. It doesn't,
Yeah.
Every bit of your training says that's not going to happen. And yet you'll see 20 feet away, you're running around a room, closed space with a guy with an RPG. You'll think, wow, he'll never fire that, but that's not the case. So fighting against a complete unknown like that is probably the hardest thing. That's what makes playing against civilians probably the toughest thing, is because you get owned. We'll easily get our ass kicked, and it's all because it's just coming out of nowhere. You're just frustrated. There's nights we get off the server and we're like, what did we just do for an hour? It felt like all you were doing is fending off psychotics.
Yeah, they're in the berserker rage, but on the backside of the coin, what Mark said, the three of us have no compunction about squatting on an objective and defending it the entire match. Well, if it's sector control or something like that, and there's 3 objectives to take, if we're only a 3-man team and we got 21 other guys that are out there running and gunning, we'll sit back to back on that one objective, and we'll protect it and take on all comers as they come in and wipe them out. They'll never get it because we're talking, we're communicating, and we're watching each other's back. And if there's a possibility where we can go out and snag another objective, 2 out of the 3 usually wins a match.
Okay.
For sure. Do you guys find that other certain unrealistic parts of the game, like, for example, the revive ability in Bad Company 2, does that bother you? Does that detract from the game at all?
Well, there's a place for it in some of the games. Especially with the AED paddles. You revive the guy and he's right back in the fight. I like some of the matches where if you get taken out in the match, you're done, like the old America's Army. You ended up as a spectator. If you got knocked out in the first 30 seconds and it was a 15-minute round, you're sitting there watching the round for the next 14 and a half minutes. It got frustrating, but you also got better at ducking and taking your time and not just running and gunning. You got taught a lesson really quick. I think in Battlefield there's a place for revival and stuff like that. So yeah, I kind of like that there, but you definitely don't see that in Medal of Honor. You just got that instant respawn. There's not even a delayed action. Give you a 30-second or 45-second penalty. I'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
I dislike it unless I'm the one getting revived, and then I think it's the greatest thing in the world.
It depends.
I think it's fine. It's that blurred line. I mean, if you were out right away, even with America's Army with that wait time, it takes a little bit out of it. We have to remember that there is a game component here. So, and we get killed just as much and want to get back in. So it's good. It gets a little irritating. I think the one that bothered me the most was. I don't like when people spawn on your squad mates, so that if you sneak one guy back behind enemy lines, and all of a sudden, as the rest of these guys get killed, you've just formed a platoon behind enemy lines. I think that if you're going to respawn, then you definitely respawn in the rear. Because if you're going to be, say, hey, I'm the replacement, then you're coming from the back. You're not going to be, all of a sudden standing poof next to somebody. So I'm not a big fan of the I just shat one of my new members is all of a sudden standing next to me.
Yeah, that encourages the spawn campers, and they'll just sit there and pick you off as you respawn.
Yeah, that's interesting because that was Bad Company's big claim to fame, and that was kind of new in the whole first-person shooter industry, and that was actually to prevent spawn trapping. You sneak one guy back, but it's interesting to get that perspective because obviously it's very unrealistic and. You're, like you said, you're just crapping out random teammates.
It could be. I mean, I've seen it used as a tactic. If you can sneak one guy into a place, he slowly wiggles his way to a really good location. Then, as the other guys die, they spawn on him, and all of a sudden, you got 4, 5, 6 guys in a spot where if you've been trying to control an area. You go from one guy who got lucky and snuck in to having 6 guys running amok behind you. So it gets a little frustrating. So I've seen it used as a tactic. So it is good against the spawn camping, but it does present other issues. But I think that's, it's just something that the game industry is working out.
I mean, yeah, that's part of the game component that you talked about, right? Like, so some of the tactics that are going to be employed are clearly unrealistic, but like it has a name, the mobile spawn point in Bad Company 2. So it's something that gets used frequently by good teams to have one guy get behind enemy lines and sort of hide out and serve as the spawn point to try and attack those objectives. So, I can see how that would be a frustrating departure from reality, but I think as well, just to try and put a mechanism in place that combats spawn camping and spawn killing, which is in most first-person shooters, and it's a problem. So I think that was a good step forward, but it might be better even if they broke it up to have like a buddy system or something like that, where you can spawn on one guy, but you can't have the entire squad spawning, something like that, so you can work in a pair, but not reinforcing an entire team behind the enemy lines.
And that's probably one of the big things. That's one of the components of Off-Duty Gamers, is not only are we going to review this stuff and look at it for our own military community guys, but to maybe try to find ways, using realistic stuff, to balance that out and make some interesting decisions. So I'm hoping to get us to a point, and we're starting to get there, where we're being called in to kind of say, hey, look, here's a problem. How are we going to solve it? And this is one of the things that we're going to be moving into this year on Off-Duty Gamers, is getting to a point where we're going to hopefully be putting out some tactical tips, things that clans and groups can actually use in practice, and then also try to come up with some new ways to look at games and kind of work out the bugs in the military community and see if it's something we can hand to developers and say, hey, do you think will this play? How will this work technically?
Stay tuned to Pixel Enemy Revive for part 2 of this week's podcast.